Money Matters on FOSS 107 with Hinckley and Rugby Building Society.
So good morning, Colin.
Good morning, Mark.
So Money Matters on FOSS 107, and today we're going to talk about savings and is it really important to be saving at this moment in time? So what are your thoughts on savings?
I think it's a great thing to be able to do. To get into the habit of saving, I think it's important for us all, Mark, and whether we're saving up for something for the first time or we're saving for a retirement, it's really important, and I think helps people's state of mind to know that they've got something they can fall back on if that unexpected repair or unexpected bill purchase comes in. So I think it's really important we get into the habit.
Do you think that we're living in a world now where we've been almost discouraged by media not to save?
I wouldn't say we've been discouraged not to save. I think we've been encouraged to purchase.
Yes.
And there's so many different ways in which you can get that item that, from the shop right here, right now, rather than waiting months or potentially years. So we are in a generation of right now, and that's the challenge. That do you want to wait 3 years for your computer game that you want to buy, or your new console that you want to buy?
It is difficult. I mean, nowadays, it's having now sort of thing, and that's not just recent times, is it? It's been like that since the late 1980s, really, hasn't it? And I think it's changing that habit, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it has been. It's been like that. You're right. Since about the 80s, at that point, credit cards started to become very common, very available for everyone, and therefore you could just put it on your credit card rather than saving. But I'd go back to the point about having that peace of mind that whatever happens, you've got that fallback that you can do something with. I'd rather have that in the bank or the building society ready to take out and pay for something than have to find some emergency loan or some other type of credit facility. Yeah. That's when it becomes very, very expensive and sometimes gets you in difficulty.
Right. I've got an interesting question here from Joseph. Thank you very much, Joseph. He says, what percentage of your wage, say you're on an average salary, do you think you should be saving?
It's a good question from Joseph. I did hear, and it's gone back a few years ago, where there was advice that said if you can put 10% away,
right,
that will mean that over a 12-month period, give or take, you'll be able to save your whole salary for a year. Now, that sounds great. It would be a lot. I think it'd be a lot for us all to put 10% away.
And of course, it all depends on what your salary is, doesn't it? I mean, if you're sort of minimum wage, that would be really difficult, wouldn't it?
It also depends what else you're doing. I mean, some people have got a pension contribution that's taken from their salary, and their employer might be doing that as well. Some people overpay on their mortgage so that they use that as a way of utilising their monies and almost saving up because they've got more equity in the property. So there's different ways, but finding a way of getting into that habit's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and it's got to be a habit, hasn't it? And I mean, I'm so passionate about it, really. I think it's something that needs to be maybe on the national curriculum at school, that they need to, we all need to understand it's important to have a little bit put aside for a rainy day.
Yeah, it is, and it's one of the items we've got in our financial education that we do at schools, because why should teenagers, early teenagers, understand the benefits, and why would they worry about some of the positions they might find themselves at later life? But I think it's also important to know, if you had money, what would you do with it? Would you put it in a savings account, or if you had some debt, is the best thing to do to pay down that debt?
That is interesting because I've got a question from Alice here. Now, lucky Alice has got a lump sum, and she says, is it better off to pay this lump sum off my mortgage at the moment or to leave it in a savings account?
So one of the ideal things you would want to know is what are the interest rates that I'm paying.
Yeah.
So if you're paying some short-term borrowing like an overdraft or credit card, you would expect that to be a high interest rate, and therefore using a lump sum to reduce them would seem the more sensible thing to do, because you'd be paying a lot more on short-term borrowing than you would get on your savings account. A mortgage could be slightly different because your mortgage rates tend to be a little bit lower, potentially not too dissimilar from savings rates at the moment, and therefore that's just a judgment call. I would always say to somebody, if you decide to pay off some debt, that's a good idea, but just leave a little bit in your savings account as well, because sometimes you can use that lump sum to clear your debt, but if any emergencies come along, you don't have the money to accommodate them.
Money Matters on FOSS 107 with Hinckley and Rugby Building Society.